It was back in 2009 when I first heard of the horrors of human trafficking. To find out that there are girls as young as my sister back then, and sometimes boys and girls as young as 4 years old, having to serve much older men or women in the global sex trade, changed my life forever.
Authorities warned us that this
horrific human trafficking case
and at least one teenager into prostitution.
Kejahatan seksual terhadap anak.
Human sex trafficking.
Did you know that there are more slaves today than ever before in history? It is the fastest growing global crime, ranking second after the illegal drug trade. But keep in mind, the commodity being sold and resold, exploited and abused are our brothers and sisters. How widespread is it? It affects every country in the world, but often occurs from less developed countries like Indonesia, where people are rendered more vulnerable to trafficking by virtue of poverty, conflict, or other conditions. The International Labour Organization estimates that forced labor and human trafficking is a $150 billion industry worldwide. The Global Slavery Index estimates that 45.8 million people are being enslaved in the world today, 79% of which are being trafficked for sexual exploitation, and 18% of which for forced labor. UNICEF says that about 2 million children are sexually exploited around the world annually. So what is human trafficking? In the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, it is defined by 3 elements: the act, what is done; the means, how it is done; and the purpose, why it is done. However, it is important to note that for children under 18 years old, the means is not taken into account. As long as the act and purpose are there, it should be enough to criminalize a perpetrator. Some of the more well-known forms of human trafficking are forced prostitution, forced labor, organ trafficking, and child trafficking, where we have children being sold before being born, forced to beg on the streets, forced child soldiers, and forced underage marriages. I cannot imagine having my own sister, mother, or child, whether male or female, be put in that situation. Can you? In Indonesia alone, it is estimated that 30% of the female prostitutes here are below 18 years old. Some are as young as 10 years old, and an estimated 40,000 to 70,000 children are victims of sexual exploitation, and an estimated 100,000 children are trafficked every year. In 2012, one of the biggest social medias in the world came out with a report that Indonesia was the #1 country in Asia for child abuse materials, or CAMs, with around 70,000 CAMs reported. And Interpol states that the worst of which were of male victims. And yet, if you go to the police or the Women Empowerment and Children Protection Ministry, the officially reported cases are nowhere near as many as that. We, Parinama Astha, are here to make a change. Parinama Astha is Sanskrit for transformation into hope, because we believe that every single victim who has been successfully rescued or who has successfully escaped trafficking, when given the space, time, and tender loving care that he or she needs to fully heal emotionally and physically, then he or she will become a beacon of hope for others, especially those who are still trapped in the grips of modern-day slavery. And of course, be an inspiration for all. Parinama Astha, or ParTha for short, was founded in 2012 with the hopes that it will be at the forefront of the fight against human trafficking here in Indonesia. We are focused on 4 elements: prevention, interception, prosecution, and reintegration. We are in the process of creating that network of networks so that we may build halfway houses in every single province in Indonesia. And we hope to one day open the doors to our permanent safe house, where we can carry out our vision to see victims' lives restored and to see them become survivors in their own right. We cannot do this alone. In the words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And we might not look like much now, but remember this: when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. Join us and be an abolitionist of modern-day slavery and injustice in the 21st century.